In today's film, we are given 3 distinct storylines, each of which is distinct from the others. This narrative depicts how, around 3 a.m., all the demonic spirits awaken and strange incidents happen to people. The name of today's first story is The Way. Here, we see a wig shop where wigs were made and a girl named May running it with her parents. May was good at working and she worked hard. She also has a younger sister, but she wasn't fond of working. One day, May's parents went out for some work while leaving those sisters home. Meanwhile, a lady sells nice hairs to May, but as she keeps the bag on the ground, it starts moving weirdly, and seeing it, May's dog starts barking. Anyhow, May cleans the hair and starts making a wig of them. Meanwhile, a hand behind her tries to capture her, and May also feels that someone is standing behind her, but there was none when she sees behind. In the meantime, May's sister comes and tells her that she is going to a party tonight. She says, "Keep the door open because I will be back at any time." May completes her wig, puts her shop's shutter down, and goes to sleep. Their shop was inside the house. Now because it was late at night, she went to wash her face before sleeping, but as she bends her head, her nose starts bleeding. She also takes medicine to stop it, but it was still bleeding. As she washes her face, the water fills the sink, and when she puts her hand to clear the sinkhole, a bunch of hairs come out of it. She couldn't understand anything to see it, but then strange voices come from the hole. She sees inside the hole, but a hand comes out of it, and May gets scared to see it. She fell down and then she wakes up. It means it was just her dream. She wakes up and hears noise in her house. May goes and sees her sister with her friends. May sees her sister and says in anger, "You were going to a party outside with your friends? Then what are you doing here?" But May's sister doesn't listen to her and goes to her house's roof with her friends to party. During the party, a friend of May's sister brings a wig from downstairs and was kidding while wearing it. It was the same wig May had made with the hair that lady gave her. May also sees him doing this and asks her sister's friend to place the wig while scolding him. The sisters fight on this. Her sister says, "How can you scold my friends like this?" Meanwhile, when her friend was moving downstairs to place the wig, a hand from the wig strangles his neck and face. When they all come downstairs while hearing the screams of that boy, they saw his separated head and was kept in the middle of the wigs. They all get scared to see this terrible scene and try to get out of the shop, but in a hurry, the shutter's key gets stuck in the lock and breaks. A friend of May's sister moves inside to get the other key, but outside they hear her screams. When they go to see her, she was just saying, "Someone help me," they don't understand anything. Meanwhile, that hand comes out of that girl's shirt and hits her against the wall, continuing to strike her until she dies. Witnessing this, May's sister and her friend run towards the roof. May injures her foot, and her sister's friend separates from them. He then sees a soul in front of him. It was the same soul from whose hair May had made the wig. She doesn't like that someone has removed her hair. The boy gets scared seeing that soul and falls on the sharp nails laid outside, which stab into his body. May's sister's last friend also dies. Now only May and her sister were left. They run and enter their shop. Inside was a thermal chamber in which May works for drying and melting hair. May's sister says, "Look, I will go out to call for help and you stay locked in this thermal." Meanwhile, the soul arrives and, seeing May inside, she locks the thermal tightly. Later, she increases the temperature. May's sister also returns after a while and tries to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The thermal bursts due to the high temperature, causing a huge blast. After a while, May's parents come home. May's sister tries to call her mom, but her mom doesn't see her or hear her. Then May comes and hugs her mom. May's sister notices May's belly where the sharp glass was stabbed. She realizes that May is dead. However, May should have died in the blast from the thermal in which she was locked. Now we see May hugging her mom, and her eyes were white, indicating the soul was inside May, protecting her. Hence, nothing happened to her. Now, as the soul seeks a new host while entering May, our first story concludes here. Second story. Now it's the turn of the second story named Corpse Bridal. At the start, we see a boy, TOS, working in a mortuary to protect dead bodies. One day, he is sent to a house where he has to safeguard the bodies of a couple. His duty is to stay in this house for a week and protect the dead bodies because it's a family ritual to keep the deceased at home for a week, with their favorite dish placed in front of their pictures for their soul's peace. TOS was sleeping in their room at night. Meanwhile, a showpiece starts moving by itself, but TOS ignores this. In the morning, while he was cooking, he hears voices from the room where the dead bodies were kept in coffins. When he checks, there was a lizard on the wife's coffin. As TOS reaches there, the lizard moves inside the wife's coffin, slipping into the girl's clothes. When TOS opens the coffin to take the lizard out, he sees cut marks on that girl's neck that were stitched. As he touches the girl's body, the husband's coffin collides with the wife's coffin. It seems like he is trying to stop him from touching his wife. Being scared, TOS goes to another room, closing the wife's coffin behind him. In that room, he finds a bag containing a camera and a CD. He sees the camera and finds pictures of the girl tied up. Seeing this, he thinks maybe the girl's husband beat her. Meanwhile, there's a knock on the door of the room. When he checks, someone has tied that door with a thread. As he follows the thread, he sees the girl standing in front of him, calling him. Meanwhile, the girl's husband emerges from behind, suppresses her, and takes her away. He threatens TOS, saying, "If you value your life, leave our house." Then TOS wakes up. It was all just a dream. The CD found in the bag plays as TOS wakes up, showing the girl's husband brutally beating her while tying her up. Witnessing this, TOS is disturbed by the husband's cruelty, thinking about how evil he is to treat his wife in such a manner. Driven by this revelation, TOS heads to the room where the dead bodies were kept. He finds the wife's coffin open and her corpse appears disturbed. He senses that perhaps the girl's husband isn't sparing her even after death. It seems he is haunting her as a ghost. Believing that the husband's spirit is tormenting his wife, TOS separates the husband's coffin from his wife's. He places it in a temple and secures it with a thread. Then he tends to the girl's dead body, attempting to fix her injuries. During this, he notices the same thread used to stitch the girl's neck, the same thread he saw in his dream tying the door lock. This revelation surprises him. As TOS cares for the girl's body, he finds her appearance striking and is captivated by her beauty at first sight. TOS diligently takes care of the girl's remains, keeping her close at all times. He even sleeps alongside her. One night, while sleeping, TOS hears noises from the room where he placed the husband's coffin. To his surprise, the coffin was open and the husband's dead body was missing. As TOS returns to the room, he finds the wife's corpse missing. He considers the possibility that the soul of the girl's husband is behind these occurrences. Suddenly, a hand grabs his foot from under the bed, stabbing a piece of glass into it, causing bleeding. He glimpses the husband's corpse lying in a corner. In this moment, TOS experiences a vision. The girl's husband had bound her because she attempted to end her life. Eventually, upon her insistence, her husband released her. Subsequently, she used a piece of a showpiece to first sever her husband's neck, then her own, resulting in their deaths. The eerie happenings in the house were orchestrated by the girl's soul, not her husband's, whom TOS had grown fond of. Realizing this, TOS attempts to flee the house. However, as he tries to escape, he notices it's precisely 3 a.m. according to the clock. Suddenly, the girl grabs his neck, causing him to faint. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself inside the girl's coffin, screaming and struggling to get out. But the girl is sitting atop the coffin, determined not to let TOS escape. It appears she seeks revenge against TOS for the wrongs he may have committed against her. Final story. In the final story titled OT, a girl is working late in her office. She's engaged in conversation through an app while 2 employees are leaving after their overtime. As they approach the lift and press the button, they are startled by a dangling head in front of them. Meanwhile, the girl inside remains engrossed in her conversation. Suddenly, all the office equipment starts flickering on and off. Witnessing this, the girl becomes frightened and rushes away from the area. Simultaneously, 2 men, the bosses of the office, are revealed to be playing a prank on their employees. They believe their staff members are earning money through overtime without actually working. Their antics are intended to teach the employees a lesson. The employees near the lift realize it's their bosses playing a joke. They approach the bosses, seeking permission to leave and depart. One of the bosses, remains in the office while the other boss, Karen, goes out for food. While T is working, he hears voices from the adjacent room. Investigating, he senses a presence but finds nothing when he switches on the lights. Approaching the fridge, he notices it moving. Just then, Karen returns with food and inquires about T's anxious state. T explains about the moving fridge, but when they check, there's no food inside. Karen leaves the food and departs. T, still shaken, encounters a witch emerging from the fridge, frightening him. As he rushes to Karen for help, he perceives monsters in his colleague. Overwhelmed by fear, T collapses, losing consciousness. As it turns out, the 2 employees and Karen were pranking T, but after a while, T doesn't come back to his senses. When the employees check T's breathing, they discover he's passed away. Shocked by the sight, the female employee breaks down in tears. Karen instructs them to go home, assuring them he'll take care of everything, but he warns them not to tell anyone about it. While the female employee approaches T, he suddenly grabs her hand, indicating he was also part of the prank. They share a laugh. Karen asks them to stay put while he goes to get some items from his room. However, much time passes and Karen doesn't return. When T and the employees go to investigate, they find Karen seemingly having taken his own life. This prank crosses a line, provoking anger among everyone. As they are leaving the office, Karen instructs the female employee to retrieve the keys from a room. However, upon entering, he's shocked to find T's lifeless body there, which terrifies him. Karen and the female employee rush to see what has startled him, equally surprised. They realize T is deceased, prompting the question, who is the person with them? Karen hastily tries to flee the office with his employees, but suddenly, the lights go out and the automatic door shuts. He urges his employees to retrieve the key from his room, but they are fearful. Eventually, they gather the courage to retrieve the key, only to find the dead body of their boss, Karen. It turns out that the deaths were staged. The bodies the employees found were just rubber statues resembling T and Karen. Unaware of this, the employees are encountered by Karen and T as they head down by stairs instead of using the lift. Karen and T apologize, saying it was all for fun, relishing the employees' reactions. Silence hangs in the air. As the lift prepares to depart, T receives a call from the building's watchman. It's 3 a.m. and the watchman reports the deaths of 2 office employees who fell down the stairs, their bodies taken away by an ambulance. Karen and T, realizing the souls they encountered in the lift were their deceased employees, understand that there's no escape. As the lift descends, it signifies the end for Karen and T. As for which story I like, they all have their intriguing elements, but the suspense and twists in the third story, T, added a gripping layer to the movie's conclusion.